Welcome to the Front Row Back Row podcast presented by PhysioGrowth. We're your hosts, Brian, who scaled a PT practice from the trunk of his car to 6 locations, and Owen, who helped lead an 8-figure exit and now runs a cash-based PT practice. This show is real conversations from owners actively building with what's working right now. Hey guys, we just did a client acquisition webinar. Replays of it are on physio-growth.com. This is part 1 of our client acquisition series, but we go way more in depth with some of our stuff that we don't share on the podcast in that webinar. So if you go to physio-growth.com, you can check out the replay. Now, on to the show. All right, we did a hiring series and we love it so much. We are doing a patient acquisition series. 2 biggest questions we get in our mentorship group: how do I hire PTs? How do I get more patients? So the first thing we are going to talk about today is how to attract more patients, right? How to get more people into your business. And Brian, you told me literally right before you hit record what the other 2 were, and I completely forgot.
I knew that was going to happen. I knew that was going to happen. It's hilarious. All right, so here's the 3-part framework. We're going to do attract, convert, sale. So
There it
first is
is.
all about attracting leads. How do you consistently generate leads? The second is going to be conversion. How do we convert them, right? How do I turn those leads into scheduled evaluations? And then how do I scale it? How do I create predictable growth? And how do I keep building? So that's the 3-part series that we're going to do.
There you go. I'm a terrible host,
I like
but it's all
knew
right.
you. I knew that was. Cause you know why I knew that was gonna. All right, let me be fair to Owen. The reason I knew that would happen to Owen, I didn't write it down in our chat here of what it was, and I knew that if it was the shoe was on the other foot, I would totally forget in the 10 seconds that you said it to me. So that's how I knew it.
I'm,
I was like, I got you.
I'm like that. I'm like that hockey player on the Mighty Ducks movie who can't like stop, right? He
Yeah.
just runs into a wall. Like, all right. Okay. Anyway, for anybody under the age of 30 didn't get that reference. Okay, so we are talking about acquisition model and how to get more people. So the first thing that we always tell our members of our mentorship group is to make sure that you know your perfect patient. And of course, they will say, look, my perfect patient is anybody with a pulse and a wallet, right? Well,
Yeah.
no, that is maybe a good thing for the first week of your business, right? But it is not a sustainable way of building a practice. We use the perfect patient framework. And what that is, in a nutshell, if you want to find out more, physio-growth.com. But the perfect patient framework is basically saying, what is the one patient that if I was to cancel everybody and say, guess what? You can only treat one person 20 times today. What patient would that be that would make you happy? Right? You'd be like, oh, cool. Can't wait to go to work. So for me, it's a golfer, right? It is probably a 45 to 50-year-old plus golfer who plays 4 times a week. They typically are a member of a country club. They go to the gym and they tend to read golf magazines. They tend to have a career and they're very good at following instructions, right? So those are very, very specific. That is, notice it was not just golfers in Scottsdale, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's because of the perfect patient framework that we did this. What we use is a way to take your ideal client and figure out everything about them so that you know how to get them to come to you, right? So I figuring out your perfect patient, what you would love to treat, and then finding out more about them, right? So the biggest strategy I use is ask my perfect patient, right? I have a business. There's probably about 8 or 9 of these in the first 6 months that I had. And I just asked every single one of them, what do you read? Where do you hang out? What clubs are you a member of? And that would allow me to say, ooh, maybe I should advertise at this 5K, or maybe I should advertise at this, charity event. Um, I know that that's great for cash. Now, Brian, you have a insurance-based model, right? For your PT side, you do a lot of fitness, for the cash side. But I wonder if that changes at all for you, or if it's kind of a kind of the
It's
same thing.
absolutely identical. Absolutely identical. Because the reality of the situation is it actually probably changes more in the conversion podcast that we'll do, but the attraction is exactly the same, right?
Okay.
If there's golfers, say Owen wants to treat golfers and I want to treat golfers. First off, let me back up real quick. The first thing that I would say in general when it comes to designing your perfect patient is being very, very specific. So we're using the golfers aspect, but I'm going to give you a great example of 2 different golfers, right? and how it's going to completely influence the marketing plan moving forward, right? Owen is in, let's even first off, let's just talk geography. Owen's looking for specific golfers in Scottsdale, Arizona, right? I do not live in Arizona. Therefore, I would probably not be looking for people in Scottsdale, Arizona. Instantly, geography changes the game, right? Number one. So, like
Brain
for
blast.
right, exactly. So,
Hold on to your seats, people.
so here's the thing, and let me explain, right? So I'll give you examples of this. So if my perfect patient is a 45-year-old golfer who's at a private country club, who's got three kids, he's got a white collar job, he is in Scottsdale, Arizona, and on the weekends he works out, or on the weekends he plays golf, and during the week he works out, and let's just leave it at those details. You can get super granular, but just use those details. Already off the bat, I can design a marketing plan around that person. The second one is if I have the exact same avatar, but I make them a female, I got news for you. That also changes the marketing plan, right? So because if it's a female, if it's that guy's wife, that just means what I'm looking to do is I don't want to go to men's groups only, right? That would make no
Mhm.
sense for her. I don't want to go to women's groups only because that will not work for him. So the aspect of this is trying to find different components that match where your fish are fishing, right? Like again, if I'm and the analogy there is if I'm trying to catch tuna, I'm not just going to go in some random pond that doesn't have tuna. That makes no sense. So the
Mhm.
aspect of this is why it's so important to create that and be very, very specific. One of the things that I've noticed when we're trying to do this at scale is that people will say to me, it's just happened recently, they go, you know, I really just like treating really people who are motivated to come into the clinic. And I've learned to drill down on that because the reality
Mhm.
of that is if that person comes in with that plan, and then I got four other PTs in the clinic that have individual plans, that person who just wants the motivated people, guess what? They're going to get the bottom of the barrel, bottom of the totem pole people because
Mhm.
those other four PTs are hustling on that marketing plan to get their types of people. And so what's going to happen is that person's quite frankly going to get the least motivated people, ironically. So
Yeah.
that's how that works. So if you're just like, I really want nice, motivated people to come in for exercise, I got news for you. That's not good enough. You need to
Well,
make it
I
more
will.
specific.
I'll tell you a big fail that I had, right, about a year ago. And the Jewish Community Center in Scottsdale is really well regarded. It's huge. It's got great facilities. They give back to their community a lot. Just and they're very good with sponsors. So I said, okay, I'll give you a few $1,000. And they're like, yeah, you can come put a table out. You can do all this stuff. Amazing, right? Well, I find out as I'm doing it that the people who come there, they come for the gym. Well, the gym is like $10 a month or $20 a
Ah,
month,
yeah,
right? It
yeah.
is Planet Fitness level, which nothing against that. But if I'm charging $200 a session, that's a giant waste of time. So I go and I set up my table and I do all this stuff and all that. About 3 or 4 months into this, someone's like, "Oh yeah, no, just go to the gala. The gala is where like all the charitable donations are, and anybody who makes over like $200,000 a year goes to that because it's a networking event." And I'm like, "Oh, could I just sign up for that specifically?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's like $500 to be a sponsor." I was like, "Awesome, great." So me spending $2,000 to sit at a table was kind of worthless because I didn't know. I didn't know enough. I didn't use that of like what is my perfect patient the one who walks through these doors every day, or is it someone who supports this, right? And that's a case study in not doing my due diligence of spending sponsorship dollars not on my perfect patient.
Totally. And that's the aspect of there's and now honestly, I could even argue, and this is what I would say to people who are listening to this. There's even an argument to be made that like that situation that Owen just talked about from the JCC that he was around doesn't mean that it wasn't effective and will get him a patient. It just means that the play is different. Meaning
Yeah,
like it's going to be more branding based. It's going to be more of a long-term play. Well, those
yeah,
plays when you're smaller, you really want to make sure that you're like doing it at a smaller scale, right?
yeah.
You don't want to be
And you
spending
need
thousands
and
of
you need
dollars on something.
leads. You need leads a lot when you're small and you're trying to fill a schedule. Whereas with you, where you have 6 clinics, a branding deal is a really good idea,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, no, agreed.
Well,
Absolutely.
also on the flip side, I'll give you an example. I'm actually going to do a golf tournament tomorrow that we're involved
Mhm.
in. And so they said, "Hey, pay for your entry, and then will you donate stuff to the as to become a sponsor? Like, we'll make you a sponsor of the event if you donate a bunch of bags." I was like, done. I was like, I'm gonna do. I got for $100. I got all these really cool drawstring bags that I'm gonna bring. I donated
Yeah.
a couple challenges for workouts. They're gonna silently bid. I'm gonna go to the dinner and be around the stuff and network the whole time. It's perfect. So it's one of those
Yeah.
things where it's like that is actually gonna get you more patience. Now, you asked what's the difference between insurance and the cash game. I got news for you. If you're a cash PT coming to that golf event tomorrow, I'm about to work the crap out of you. You're going to get nothing out of your money. Because the difference of what I'm going to do is now you got to compete with me and you got to compete with me plus you got to say price. Because you got to say, "Hey, that guy Brian that's awesome over there, he's cheaper than me, but I'm going to do a better job than you." It's like that's I got news for you. You got trouble. That's where insurance is
Mhm.
different than cash. So the idea is for these for physical therapists that are leaning on the cash angle of, "Oh, don't go to your local insurance place that sucks." You better make sure that you're that much better than them because there are PT practices out there from an insurance-based aspect that are really freaking good. So it's just a matter of making sure that you're competing on a really good, really good footing in that scenario. So that's where the difference on the insurance-based to cash-based. The marketing strategy is um, not
Well, that
different, but the idea is, and that's the mistake that some people make, is they're not solving the problem. You're still solving the problem. The difference is that you're one of the huge objections is price for a lot of people on lots of different things, and that's the objection that I'm going to win every single time over that cash PT. That's the difference.
well, and that messaging conversation brings us into our next step, right? Is now you found your perfect patient, right? And of
Yeah.
course, the insurance versus cash, right? But let's just say Brian's not at the golf tournament and I'm the only PT there. They like, all that stuff. What, you know, what I next have to figure out is what is my message that will take my perfect patient across the finish line that'll say, okay, yeah, but you know, I have this one PT I liked like 5 years ago down the street at this clinic. Why should I go with you? Right? Or what is the message that you would use to attract that perfect patient? So we found, who this person is, where they hang out, what they like to do. Now we have to craft a message towards that person to make them want to come to you. So, like, what are some strategies that you use when you are targeting either anything from like paid ads all the way down to that conversation at a golf tournament to kind of refine that message?
So I think again, one of the things that I would look at very specifically is um I mean, that's a good question, but I think the difference is what you're trying to do is you're trying to make sure that when you're connecting with very specific people, you're concentrating specifically on problems. So let's use the
Mhm.
golfer analogy, just because I feel like it's low-hanging fruit because we talk about it all the time, and it's one of Owen's, and we're always talking about this process.
Yeah.
So, you know, the reason for why patients buy is because ultimately you're solving a problem for them.
Mhm.
So there's three major things that come through it, right? And I tell people it's trusting three different things. One is the person delivering the service, so the physical therapist. Two, the company that's providing the service. And three, is the service actually going to fix their problem? So the perceived
Yeah.
value,
Like, have
and
you helped someone like me?
yes, and I would also throw in the way that the value jacks up is time. So meaning if I can, if, and how much effort and sacrifice there is. So for me, the aspect of it is like here's one thing that I would do if I was a cash-based physical therapist. And this is why I think it's wild that there's like students going to cash-based physical therapist. If I was a cash-based physical therapist, one of the things that I would do is I would say to people who like are golfers in an event, be like, "Hey, I can fix your back pain and no problem and help you drive the ball, um, 10 to 15 yards farther because you're not getting the same efficiency out of your back. And I can probably do it in like 4 weeks and probably 4 visits, right?
Mhm.
I just skyrocketed the value for that, right? And
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a great example. And again, for all you cash PTs listening to this is an insurance PT talking. There was
Mhm.
a guy that was going to another cash-based physical therapist that I just worked with. He was an all FCI lacrosse player. He's going to play D1 lacrosse. He was working with somebody who was scraping his calves for a year. I realized he was coming from his back. In one visit, he came back. He goes, "I'm literally pain free."
Hmm.
So like this is what's happening in cash-based PT also that we're seeing this nonsense is like there's people that are not good that are doing it. You got to be good at delivering that product. So because the
Yeah.
reality is if you're not getting people better, you're going to struggle as a cash-based physical therapist because you can't hide. You can't
Yeah.
hide, right? And that's what I going back
No,
to
well,
the
this is where experience wins, is because so
totally.
I've done 16 years. Let's just use this, and you're the cash PT, and I've done it for 16 years. And someone says, "Yeah, but can you help me?" And I'd be like, "I have 5 patients you can call right now,
Yeah,
or I have 3 video testimonials. Would you like to see them on my phone?" Right?
for sure.
Or I've worked with so and so at this club, and they've told 5 of their friends. Whereas the new person can't do that. But if you even if you are a new person, being able to tell them their pain to them is massively important too. So if you came in as a new grad and then I'm sitting across the table, it's like, okay, well, why should I choose you? If you were a golfer who had back pain, who knows how much it sucks to not play the full round and you can't, be out with your friends and, it makes it so you can't put the dog food down the next day and your wife's asking you, we're hiring people to do stuff because you can't do it anymore. And, basically you articulate what they're going through. That is the way a newer grad with less of a track record can beat someone who has a track record but doesn't know how to message that, right?
Yep,
If I didn't have, hey, here are 5 people, here's 2 video testimonials, and here's a doctor who sends me a bunch of patients. If all I said was, I've done this for 16 years, but then you come in as a new grad and be like, dude, I know what it feels like. It must suck when this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens. They're going to be like, oh, that guy totally gets it, right?
totally,
You beat 16 years every time.
totally.
So there are ways that you can message differently when you don't have experience. And you can also really screw up when you do have experience.
Totally. This is I think you touched on something that's beautiful as that part because kind of what I was chatting about is, you know, to Owen's point, words matter. And that's the biggest difference in cash PT is that, you know, again, the objection is different. So what I think that cash physical therapists do that are incorrect is they approach it that it's different. Right. And I'll put this back to I remember 10 plus years ago, I remember being like, my practice is different. And somebody was like, your practice is no different. Everybody's the same. So like imagine it be no different than, if you were hiring somebody to do your lawn and somebody was a higher price, but they did just a much better job and you liked them better and the whole thing was much more responsive and it's just a less pain in your butt. You were just like super psyched about it. You might be like if you have the cash and you value it, you might be willing to spend more money to get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you don't have the money, then maybe you do go with the cheaper option and deal with the headache. But the answer is like this is the difference in the cash PT to insurance based piece. That's why insurance based, when people are like, oh, there's headache patients in insurance. Yeah, I mean that's what happens because they can linger and they're kind of stuck there. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So there's different aspects to everything, but the reality is it's all important, all the time in terms of like, the way that you approach these situations. But that to me is the key. Is again, remember the three things. The big first key factor is your messaging should be all around fixing their problem. Number one. And number two, what you're trying to do is you're trying to earn your trust as the individual delivering the service. You're trying to earn their trust that the service is superior over other things because, remember that, like, just because you're a physical therapist who takes cash or insurance doesn't mean that someone's not willing to go see a chiro or see a massage therapist or an acupuncturist or do surgery, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So the service is also a big piece of it. Like, why does physical therapy help back pain for golfers specifically? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then three is also the trust in the company. So the other piece of it is like, say we have a great physical therapist that works for us, but we're a crap company that doesn't do well, bills incorrectly, does all these different things. They're just not going to want to work with you, even regardless of how big of a head, because it's a headache to work with this company that you're involved with. So that's another piece that we try to be barriers on that stuff, and that's huge.
So then, okay, we've got our messaging then.
Yeah,
We found our perfect patient. We make sure that we convey to them we're a trustworthy company. We can fix what you've done. We've done it before, right? Or at least we understand your pain better than most, right? Now the question is, okay, we got our message, we have the person we're going after. How do we get more people to know about our stuff, right? So how do we get those leads? How do we get people coming in? And this is what we'll end today on this as part one. Part two and three, we'll talk about converting those leads and things like that. But like, let's go through kind of the basics, right?
yeah,
Anybody who's listened to a PT podcast knows, There's the Google ads, there's the Facebook ads, there's organic traffic, posting a TikTok of you, I don't know, doing something about a Netflix documentary about you getting ready to talk about your business, whatever the new thing is, right? But there's a lot that goes into it, right? And I like to break it down into kind of like the cheapo version, right? Someone who just started, they have no meta ad money, sponsorship, maybe they can do one a year, all the way up to someone who's making a pretty decent, they have word of mouth, they've existed in a place providing a good service for 3+ years. That's pretty much that's what you got to get to. Like to make your old paycheck back is 3 years, don't suck. You'll make your old paycheck back. But they don't have like a lead gen machine, right? They
Yeah.
can't get more people. They wouldn't be able to hire that second therapist if you put a gun to their head, right? So like what are some good like I know I kind of went over everything, but lead generation, what should you be thinking as the owner? Like what is my objective with just getting that perfect patient to hear my message?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing I'm going to say here is I'm going to plug the webinar workshop that we're putting together here on client acquisition that I think would be money for anybody. If
Hmm.
you're interested, if you're on the edge of your seat being like, "Ooh, I'm curious what Owen's talking about." The first thing that we're doing is we're literally launching a webinar on this that we're going to talk about like a 6-week boot camp. So for those who are curious about how we do this process, there's a really good resource coming. So if you're curious about it, set up an appointment with us. We can tell you about it, physio-growth.com, because this is it. What Owen just asked. How do I do it?
Everything that I just talked about gets a lot of time in each one of those in the workshop.
Yes,
So
exactly.
yeah.
And the reality of it is, Owen, is the answer is it's different for every single business. Because, and again, just like I talked about, it drives the perfect patient conversation because that's what drives the different things, right? So, for instance, um, a little detail that matters, corporate relationships are a great example. Well, does that 45-year-old male golfer work still? Does the female golfer work? I don't know. Like it depends on your perfect patient, you know?
Yep.
In the corporate relationships, if you're trying to create those people, you know, guess what? If you're trying to look for the 45-year-old white collar job, um, white collar golfer, probably creating a corporate relationship with Costco doesn't make any sense, right? But
Mhm.
creating a corporate relationship with a reinsurance company may be a
Yeah.
great idea, right?
Or a law firm. Be
Or a
be the
law
guy
firm.
who shows up every Monday at 9 o'clock and gives massages. Well, not massages, but you know what I mean,
Yeah,
like fixes pain stuff
yeah.
for 2 hours, and all of a sudden you're getting everyone in the office.
I mean, for us, where I'm in Connecticut, right, it's like the finance capital of the world. So, like a private equity fund or
Yeah.
like, a bank
Oh
or
yeah.
whatever. So, like the idea behind that, right? I think physician referrals when it comes to the perfect patient is actually probably the lowest on the totem pole. However, the place that you got to start first from a relationship perspective, because when we talk about it,
Yeah.
we're going to talk about these workshops is, creating referral sources is just your time. So when you're just starting out, how to do things for cheaper is important because that way, if you swing and miss, it doesn't cost you anything. Now, when you get into some of these paid advertisements, it matters more on how you hone into your perfect patients and your perfect clients,
Mhm.
and that's what influences that decision, in my opinion. So,
Well, and physician stuff is affiliate marketing, right? And
yeah,
they're great because if you get the one physician who also specializes in the thing you are, or at least sees a lot of people that are your perfect patient, they love you, then oh my God, they're seeing 30 visits a day of people who need PT, and you're the first one they talk to. That builds practices, right? But the problem is that's like one out of 50 doctors that is willing to go to bat for you, not just the whole like, oh, I don't know, do whatever the front office says, right? And the one that is, especially if you're cash, it's probably 1 in 100, right? Um, but you have to do it because you hit on one of those and you're doing really, really well. So I always want to put that out there because a lot of the cash PTs I've talked to are like, I don't even go to physicians. I'm like, dude, 35% of my practice is physician referrals as a cash PT. And it's because I spent 15 years treating their patients in insurance. And I get a higher conversion rate because they remember me. But it is really nice when you get one of those guys sending you people. And that is to illustrate a point of it's individual, right? If you're in a rural town where there's one PCP, yeah, you got to say hi to them every once in a while, but it's probably not going to do anything. It's
yeah,
probably going to be more the community events. right? It's going to be the fact that you're at the Rotary and that you're showing up for like the chicken barbecue on July 4th, you know? But it's very individualized. And that's what we're going to go through when we do talk about this stuff is the pluses and minuses of each of those lead gen strategies. And then anybody on the call, hopefully that'll be something that can relate to them. So, Brian, I kind of I want to wrap this up because I think it's one of those things that obviously we're going to be talking about a lot when it comes to our webinar and our workshops. But do you have anything to add in terms of like the
Yeah,
lead gen stuff?
let me sum it up with this real quick, right?
Thank you. Stop me from talking.
No, 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 no. I think you did a good job. I think you did a great job. My thing that I would do to end with this is that may resonate with people is I am in the process of trying to hire a new physical therapist. And one of the things she's working with some of the big box places. I'm not gonna, mention names, but one of the things that really separated us for her, where I can tell she's just like it's one of these things where I feel like she's going to move away from home to come work for us purely because we fit more of the niche of what she's interested in doing, right?
Yeah.
And so the reason I bring this up is one of the things about what we talked about in the hiring series was fulfilling and finding really good physical therapists. And the reason why it starts with really good marketing and the stuff we're talking about lead generation is if anybody has worked in a clinic that they're like, this is not exactly what I thought it was going to be, or this is not what they told me, or these are different patients, and I don't feel like I'm in control of treating the types of patients I want to treat. It's generally because the lead generation's off, and it's because this perfect patient thing is messed up, and all this thing is not correct. So the reality is, if you're or my favorite one that I think is everyone has worked or has heard someone talk about. I used to work in this clinic. I went to this clinic for like old people. That's like my favorite
Yep.
one I've ever heard, right? The reason being is we have spent $0 on marketing and we still get 10 to 15% Medicare in our clinics. Why? Because it's high demand and they're just they have it's free for them. There's no price objection. They can just come. They've paid into their life. So to those of you who are like, listen, I love treating older folks, like your marketing is very simple. You go to community events, that senior centers and churches and things like that, synagogues. It'll be very easy, right? And that is the path of least resistance. However, if you're somebody who's like, I don't want to treat those people, or I need more dynamic setups around that, then you need to do that. You need to find those people. So my point being is, when it comes to this process in general, it starts really right here, but it can really make or break your entire clinic. That is why we put together this workshop and this webinar because it really is the thing that should launch and scale any business, right?
Mhm.
It's as Alex Hormozy has said in the past, it is hard to be poor with leads knocking down your door. So the reality is you can weed out who you want, who you don't want to see, and you can really focus on who you do want to see, work with who you want, and that helps your business just absolutely boom.
There you go. All right. If you want to know more, physio-growth.com. We have mentioned it before, but we are running a webinar about client acquisition. So look for that. We'll put a link in the show notes. And if you are at all interested in joining up in our mentorship group, some of the stories that we've shown, physio-growth.com will take you to our school group where we do a weekly Q&A. It is a high value, low dollar offer, and it is honestly the reason we started this. It's so cool to see people grow and, you know, our oldness with my gray in my beard helping them out.
We're not
So,
trying to get, we're not trying to gatekeep here. We're trying to help people grow and do things,
nah, man,
just
we got our own business.
fun.
This isn't our cash cow. All right,
Exactly.
my
Cool.
friend, we are out.
All right. Later, man. See ya.
See ya. Yay.